Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so y'all are welcome to take yourselves off mute. I would like each of you to briefly introduce yourself and share how you have been working with me over the past few years. Deanna, can we start with you?
Of course. I always want to go by somebody else after, but that's okay. I don't even know where to start about how much my life has changed since I have met you, had you in my life. I call it Alicia Land. I've had an incredible growth. I've taken several of Alicia's courses. I'm in her morning group. And I think what sticks out most in my mind is in coaching. I was really stuck, and Alicia is very thorough when she talks to you and really gets all her information. And she records so you can watch it after. And it really made me think, like, why am I so stuck? Like, she really laid out a great plan for me. It felt like I could follow it. But it really got me to see things in a different way. And I have to say that really was life-changing for me, because I was really down on myself about not being able to do that. And since then, it has opened up, like, I don't even think Alicia realizes it, to be honest with you, because it made me really research why I was having such difficulty finishing things, focusing on things that I want. And with that, I have learned a lot about myself and have read on tips on how to help myself. And I have to say, I am so peaceful now. I can take classes now. I always thought I have to grow. I have to do this. I have to do this. Why aren't I doing this? I was so down on myself. And like, it's okay. It's okay to just learn. It's okay to be yourself. You don't have to have a goal all the time. So it almost worked in an opposite way of, instead of like, I'm going to reach this goal, it was like, I don't need to do that. Like, I can enjoy my life and what I'm learning. So that was incredibly helpful. And I have to say, I really am enjoying. I have taken courses since, and I don't have to do anything with them. I'm just having fun.
I love that, Deanna. Thank you so much for sharing. T, can you share a little bit about who you are and what you've done with me in the past and maybe why?
Absolutely. I'm T. Stoneman, and I'm in the Raw group, and I was in the most recent iteration of In the Company of Women. And first, let me talk about Raw, because that is such a heart of my life. The amount of support, and Alicia has this genius for attracting people who, it's a pretty miraculously wonderful group of women in Raw. I've belonged to both groups. There's 2 times, and I've belonged to both. I'm on the West Coast, so the timing of the first one, I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go to Raw when that was the only option. And I don't do that. I don't do that. I might still be up or have insomnia, but I don't even know why or how I knew that this is where I wanted to be. Now I get to do the 6 o'clock group, which is much better. But the amount of support and the amount of, like, these compassionate mirrors that really show me the best of myself. When I'm struggling, show me that, wow, you're honest and you're brave. It's really miraculous. And then I did In the Company of Women. I had gotten a reading before from Alicia that was amazing. And then I did In the Company of Women. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure about it. I was like, sometimes I don't work. So sometimes, well, no, actually, I just don't work. And I love that I don't work. Sometimes I worry that programs are going to be too business or big project related. And that isn't what my life is about. But I was stunned by each of the classes. I learned something, and I had a list of values going in, but the list of core values I have now are the most idiosyncratic, the most T list ever. And I actually think of them pretty much every day. And I can see that little teeny course correction is taking me in a very different direction. And at the end of every class, there would be like, what are your takeaways? And some of my takeaways would astound me. And I actually wrote like, it's the relationships that matter to me, not the product. It's okay to not care about what you don't care about. And for me, that was specifically how my hair looks, providing conventional hospitality, and neatness. I don't care, and that's fine. I don't have to feel guilty about it. I know there are things I know. And one of my favorites that I never thought I would have said, and I don't think I would have said without having the examples of all these other women and having Alicia's wisdom and guidance and ability to hold space, to not pack a program so full that you never have time to process, which is rare. One of my favorites was, one of my takeaways was, I love being like this. I just love being like this, how I am. And that's a pretty astonishing thing. I don't think a lot of women say to themselves. I don't think a lot of people say to themselves. And that was through the community of In the Company of Women.
Yeah. Getting to come home to yourself and like the true self without the shoulds.
Yes.
Yeah. T, you posted your core values in the chat box, and can you explain the last one that you came up with? Yeah.
So the last one I came up with is a set of open parentheses, like parentheses without the fancy parentheses. I'm sure they have a technical name. I don't know what that is. And just empty space in between. And that's just something I've used in my art. And it's something I've used whenever I make a to-do list, or whenever I do even a gratitude list, or steps of a project. I would just put that. And for me, it's shorthand for this space open for a miracle, this space left open for a miracle. But it also, to me, as a core value, is the space from which everything arises and to which everything returns.
Yeah.
Like sort of a Taoist thing, even though I'm not officially affiliated with anything. And that's what I mean by idiosyncratic. That's what I mean by T. Like, I felt comfortable with that. I've been in other classes where I did one for desired feeling states for what's her name, Danielle something.
Probably
There was
Laporte.
an in-person, what?
Danielle Laporte, maybe?
Yeah, Danielle Laporte. And there was a in-person class in San Francisco, and I went to that, and it was like an all-day, maybe a 2 or 3 day process. And one of my desired feeling states was pomegranate, which, if you're not a poet, doesn't make any sense. But to me, it means something very specific, and it conjures up. And they were like, well, that's not really what we're looking for. That's not really. And to me, it was like, no, I want to feel pomegranate. And I feel like, had Alicia been the facilitator, she would have been like, tell me what that means.
Yeah, I would have.
She would have been just honestly curious. And then if I was able to describe it, she would just say, you know what, trust yourself. And I could be pomegranate and open parentheses, because that is the real truth of who I am.
Yeah. Because it is really getting to that core of it. T, thank you so much for all of that. And
Yeah.
Katie, she was on Wednesday, but Katie, can you share a little bit about who you are and some of the work that we've done together?
How can I follow that up? What she said.
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate, open parentheses. So I started out with Alicia with one of the original iterations of In the Company of Women, which I talked about on Wednesday, that, after the first session and working on core values, just doing the meditation and honing in on my core values helped me begin to completely change my life and my career. Mm-hmm. And so since then, I've done one-on-one coaching, and I'm currently in the mastermind with her, which is awesome. And, I think that In the Company of Women, well, I guess it was only 4 years ago, maybe. I think it was 4 years ago.
I think you did it in 2019.
Okay, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So it was only 3 years ago. Seemed way longer than that, but
yeah.
It was 3 years ago, and I have completely changed my life since then. So, and I am, a much happier, more peaceful person. But as Deanna said, but I am I don't know, what am I? I'm a depth hypnosis practitioner, which is a healing modality that helps heal trauma, addictions, all sorts of difficult patterns, dealing with helping people understand that they are whole and not broken. So that's the work that I do now, which is not unlike the work that Alicia does, as T kind of explains. So, yeah. Everything that T said, I think for me, just listening to her and adding to that was that, and my understanding of how we work as humans these days is that, we're built for connection, but we're so disconnected these days just with the way that our culture is. And that just being able to be in a circle and to be in this really safe place where we can slowly but surely feel safe enough to share that part of ourselves is really healing, So I think I don't know if it was T or maybe Deanna, I don't know, one of them said that, they felt really resistant to it at first. Maybe it was T. In the Company of Women, I had that same experience where I was just oh, but it's just over time, I realized that it was a safe place to be myself. And then I was able to explore those deeper layers and learn how connected we actually are, and, how different we are, but that we all are powerful, special people. You can only attract those kind of people because that's all that there actually is. But you have to be in that sort of safe container to express that part of yourself. So, yeah.
I love that so much. And Katie, I don't want to forget to say this, so I'm going to bring it up now. Because Katie is a depth hypnosis.
I know, it's hard to say.
It is hard to say. Because Katie does depth hypnosis, I asked her to do a bonus meditation for this next round of In the Company of Women. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that meditation will take folks through?
Yeah. So in my work, especially dealing with trauma and difficult emotions, and I mean, we work on in-depth hypnosis. It's a very holistic and integrative practice. So we look at the whole human, so physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and take all those aspects into consideration. So I know people that are having autoimmune disorders or eating disorders, or having those negative thought loops, and or relationship issues, or every level of issues that they're currently dealing with. But first and foremost, before we explore any of those, we create that safety. And some of us only feel safe, or feel safer in that one-on-one sort of space. So that's partially helpful, but what my goal is as a practitioner is to help you feel safe with yourself. Because a lot of us don't feel safe in our own bodies. It's just the way it is these days. And that's actually really normal. And so the meditation that I'm sharing is one, we have some foundational work that we do in my work. And so it's one of the sessions that I typically do one-on-one, but I'm sharing as a group, but you meet that part of it's a guided meditation where you meet that part of yourself that has your highest good as its sole intent, that you can connect with and source your own wisdom, inner wisdom, and support and find safety within yourself, so that you can feel safe doing some deeper work, like the inner child work that in the company of women you explore. So
yeah, and I'm actually going to be releasing that meditation, that bonus meditation, in the first inner child module. So that will be a part of that, because I think it's really important to lay that foundation before we move forward with exploring inner child work, if we meet that part of ourself. So that's going to be a new fun part of the course in this next iteration. So Katie, thank you so much for explaining that a little bit more depth.
Thank you.
Monica, can you share who you are and in what capacities you and I have worked together?
Yeah, well, first I want to say that, Katie, that sounds fascinating and just really cool. So that I was like, this sounds amazing. So I'm Monica. I have known Alicia for quite a while, and I have done In the Company of Women at least twice. And then I've also done some one-on-one coaching, and I am working my way into the early group for Raw. It's a little challenging because sometimes it's during part of my commute, but it's really nice. I can sometimes just pop my headphones in and at least listen along at the beginning while I'm on the ferry. For me, what has been really important is, kind of like what T said, with all of these compassionate mirrors. And I love that Raw gives us the space to explore things. And also, Alicia, you have these creative prompts and these ways of having us think of things that I probably wouldn't have written about on my own, but it also brings up a lot of things that I was like, I didn't even know that was kind of in the back of my mind. And I love learning and connecting with the other women in the group. I'm somebody that I currently live alone. I spend a lot of time alone. And so to be able to have a space to have those kinds of connections with, I think, people who have so many different backgrounds and so many different approaches, every day is like a new nugget of wisdom, or 4 or 5. And that's something that I've been really appreciating. And another thing that I just have to say is, kind of like what T was saying with other workshops, and maybe saying like, that's not quite what we were looking for. In addition to leaving that space and approaching everything with curiosity, I really feel like Alicia also leaves us space to be very playful and maybe approach things in a way that aren't so like serious and this is what we have to do. That curiosity and that playfulness, I feel like for me, leads to a lot more reflection and also a lot of discovery. And that's something that I have been so happy to take into all areas of my life.
Monica, thank you so much for that. I'm curious because you have gone through In the Company of Women 3 times, well, twice In the Company of Women, and then you did my Artist Way group way in the beginning when I was experimenting with teaching groups like that. I'm curious, this last time you went through it most recently, was there anything specifically that stood out to you, especially with the new content, that just anything you want to comment about that new content?
The new content with the inner child work for me was really powerful. It gave me there were a lot of aha moments, and things that were something I had wanted to address, but kind of didn't know it was like hanging over my shoulder. And it really gave me a safe space to explore, to be curious, and to kind of ask why without judgment. And I feel like that's something had I been doing that on my own, there probably would have been a lot of judgment attached to it. So I really, really enjoyed that. And also there was someone else in the group that we actually had a lot of similar experiences. And so being able to hear someone else who had a similar past, similar experiences, and to hear her wisdom and how she was feeling and how she was moving forward, I found that to be very empowering and very enlightening.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for that. Caroline, how about you? I know you spoke a little bit on Monday, but could you share with folks who you are and maybe some of the work we've done together and anything that's standing out for you right now?
Yeah, I was just thinking there so many good things have been said. I don't even know what to add. So I mentioned some of this on Monday for those of you that were there, but I first started working with Alicia back in 2019, right at the beginning of the year. And it was just one of those things. I don't even know what brought it about, but it was like the perfect time and the perfect thing that I needed at just a time where I was feeling very lost and just not good, having a little bit of a hard time even putting my finger on all of what was going on there. And so that really prompted, that was when we were doing the one-on-one coaching, but that just prompted like a very big journey for me over the last few years. And my life is also very different than it was at that time. I've made a lot of changes. I've gone, also as a result, I think it was very complimentary for me that I also went into therapy around the same time. And so it was really helpful to kind of have those two different but complementary sorry, I don't usually hold a dog, but I am right now because of circumstances. But yeah, I think that was really helpful. And at the time, I had just never really been in an environment where I had somebody to serve as a mirror in the way that Alicia was for me. And she also was pointing out a lot of things that I had never really realized about myself in terms of like, do you hear how you're talking to yourself? Like, this is a lot of negative self-talk, things like that now seem obvious because I've learned about that. But like just very basic things that at the time, without somebody else outside of me, just kind of mentioning some of those things and giving me some tools to reflect on it and asking me questions that I had never even asked or thought you could ask, or I was too scared because the answers sometimes weren't, what you wanted them to be. But, and then I was also in the company of women now twice, both in, I guess your last in-person group, right, as the pandemic hit. So we didn't even get to do our very last one because it was literally like March 2020. And then Zoom, the most recent iteration this summer. And I think those were really important for me also because a big part of many of the things one of the many things I've been working on is just like, I was very closed off. Like I was not, if you've heard me say anything vulnerable and raw or in any of these, this is like all brand new to me. Like in the past, I had just never opened myself up to those kinds of conversations with people. And that takes a lot of practice over the last couple of years. And so having a group that is just like how we operate and how, like I think T said, it's just like everyone is also just such a compassionate listener and can also, I think when you hear or see that for other people, again, it helps you to learn to do that for yourself when it's just you. And that is also something that was very new for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so very, very much for sharing. Are there any final thoughts about Raw in the company of women or coaching that any of you want to share before we wrap up the panel?
Alicia is magic. That's all.
I love you. Thank you.
I will say that your written material, Alicia's written material, is designed so that you can use it again and again and again. It's not like there are things you can revisit when you feel like, okay, I've gotten a little off course in my navigation. I need to get hold of this. the tools and the written materials I've found incredibly helpful.
Thank you so much for that.